Hey guys, Dan Saavedra here from mergeyourdata.com, and today I wanted to go over a new spatial function that Tableau released in 2023.2. I think it's a really cool one to use. I think it's a little bit difficult to understand though, which is why I wanted to make a video on this to kind of walk through what it means, what it does, and cover some of the struggles that I ran into when initially looking into it. So first I'm going to go over to the feature release announcement. If I scroll up here, we have these geospatial analysis enhancements. And there were 3 new functions that Tableau released, one being outline, the other being shape type, and then length as well. We're just going to focus on length for this video because I think it takes a little bit to wrap the mind around it if you're not familiar with geospatial type of analysis. And one note before we go into this is I think it's really cool to realize exactly where Tableau is heading. It's still not a great tool for really in-depth geospatial analysis, in my opinion, especially if you have a large number of data points. But if you're dealing with aggregated data, or let's just say you want a low level of geospatial analysis, I think Tableau is a great option. And you can still get pretty far with it as they build on new features. We're seeing more and more capabilities. So you'll be able to do more and more as time goes on. But back to length. So if you read the description here, they say it creates new opportunities for route planning, which sounds really great. We have our distance function already, which pretty much just tells you the straight line distance between 2 points, which is useful for certain applications. But if you want to measure, let's say, lengths of roads or something like that, you're going to need a different type of function than distance. And so that's where length comes in. Now, if we go over to the spatial functions documentation for Tableau, their definition is that it calculates the combined length of all line strings in the spatial parameter. And this is where things, for me at least, got a little bit fuzzy as I'm not too familiar with spatial analysis and the details on the definitions of each of these terms. And so I thought at first, okay, this makes sense, spatial lines. I can just put this length function on 2 dots, and as long as the map in the background has a route, then Tableau will measure that length. And this, looking back, is a very stupid assumption, and I'll show you what I mean here. I'm going to pull up a visualization from Mark Reed, and he had this built out where we have these 2 points and a line in between. And for whatever reason, I assumed that Tableau would take these 2 points and then understand that there's a map in the background and determine what the length is. But that's not the case. It's not how the length function works, obviously, because you need the data behind the scenes. But for a beginner in the geospatial arena like me, that was not obvious at first. And so you could see I put the length below the actual distance here, and it's the exact same because we're really just measuring in our data set the distance between 2 points. So instead, what you need is a specific spatial file. And so if I go to this spatial data model for, if I go to this GIS spatial data model page, this definition really helped solidify what type of file we were looking for and how Tableau can utilize that in the length function. And basically, this part is the most important, which is lines are also known as arcs, hence the name ArcGIS. Each line is composed of a number of different coordinates, which make up the shape of the line, as well as a tabular record for the line vector feature. And so literally a line is just a bunch of little points, and that's what, or at least from my understanding. And so when Tableau is using the length function, it's ultimately taking into consideration all those little points along the line to give you an accurate length. And so to show you exactly how this is done, I took this example here by Andy Kreibel, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and I just downloaded this workbook and added the length function to the geometry of these roads here. So clearly this data set has those lines already defined. And so if I open up the workbook here. I added some color just so you can see the different routes a little bit better. And then for the length formula, if I open that up, all we're doing is we're putting the geometry of the line in there and then the units in the comma afterwards. And so if we look up the definition here in Tableau's little helper window, it gives a little more detail than the actual documentation. So it returns the geodetic path length of the line strings in the spatial using the given units. So the line strings are considered here. That's the important term. We define it as miles. And then if I click OK and hover over I-70 here, you can see it gives us 4,348 miles. And it's considering all of those little points in between, all those little curvatures. So hopefully this makes a little more sense after this video. I know for me it took a little bit of research and time to understand exactly what that length function does and how we can structure our data or what type of data sources we need in order to use the length function in the first place. If you've been doing spatial analysis, especially in other tools, this is probably something really stupid to you. Like you're probably like, what do you mean you would assume that just giving it 2 points would be enough to find the length via a road? It doesn't make any sense, but in case you thought the same thing as me, now you can skip that part of the learning and go straight to using the functions in the correct way. So I'm Dan Saavedra from mergerdata.com. I appreciate you watching the video, and I'll see you next time.